Today we're doing peach oatmeal bars. Now I don't often do real true desserts, but I think everybody needs to have one in their goodie bag of things that they can prepare with fairly short notice. So this one is peach oatmeal. The oatmeal is the whole grain. The peaches, of course, are the fruits, so we're going to kind of mask it as a healthy food, although it really doesn't fall in that category. And this is why. I'm going to start with 8 tablespoons or 1 stick of unsalted butter. You could probably cut that down a little bit, but if we're going whole hog, this is just one of those things that you're going to want to eat a smaller piece of. Now this is unsalted butter, and I'm going to go ahead and add the other ingredients. I've got 1 cup of old-fashioned oats, 1 cup of flour, that's just all-purpose flour, 1/4 of a teaspoon of kosher salt, so we're keeping the salt low, 1/2 cup of packed brown sugar, which is the only way to measure it, and then 1/2 cup of walnuts in this case. You could use pecans also. You don't need to toast them. This is all going in the oven. They're going to toast there. Now while we're stirring this, the thing about this one is you need to get your hands dirty, and every cook should know how to do that. As long as they're clean, you'll be fine. You could use gloves if you choose. The butter is looked like a stick when I started. Our goal here is to keep kneading this and working it until we can no longer see the butter, until there are no large chunks. Normally I'd cut this in, but with oatmeal and nuts, even if we added those later, you're still going to have to do some work with your hands. Now I mentioned that the butter is unsalted, and you may have wondered as you've wandered through the grocery store shelves, why is some of the butter salted and why is some of it not? You may have wondered when you're looking at a recipe that says for unsalted butter, and like this one, then put some salt in later. The salt is there for flavor primarily, and the two butters are actually pretty much interchangeable unless it's something very fine, like a fine white cake, and then you probably are going to want to stick with unsalted. It also adds a little bit of a preservative to it. So you get those two benefits from that combination. If it does call for salt and you're working with a baked good or something like this, and you only have salted butter and the recipe calls for additional salt, you may want to cut back on the additional salt just a little bit or altogether, just so that it doesn't taste too salty when you get to it. Remember, we're starting with whole oats here, old-fashioned oats. All oats, whether they're steel cut, stone ground, old-fashioned, quick, or instant, they are all whole grain. So this does qualify as a whole grain product, and we have a fair amount of it here. You could probably also substitute some or all whole wheat flour for this. So this is ready to go now. I'm going to set it aside. Now what I've done here is I have 2 8-inch square pans, and I have 2 because I want to show you the difference. This is a glass 8-inch pan, as you can probably tell, and this one's metal. In fact, this is an old-fashioned aluminum one. If you're using glass, we're going to preheat the oven to 350 because the glass allows the heat waves to move through much faster. You should always lower the temperature of the oven 25 degrees if you're using a glass pan. Whichever kind of pan you're using, however, line it with parchment. Put 1 sheet across this way, 1 sheet across that way, and this keeps it from sticking to the pan for one thing. It also makes it easier to clean up, which I'm always for, but it also helps with your ability to get things out easier. So this one, the sheets are probably a little bit larger than you need, so fold them down a little bit so they aren't sticking out all around. We do not want to get them on the sides of the oven. We don't want to cause any kind of fire issue at all. We're going to go back to our base mixture here, and I'm going to take out about a cup. And I'm going to put it aside because we're going to use that as the topping later on. And then put about 3/4 of your base mix here into your prepared pan, and then press it down. I'm using a metal measuring cup. If you're willing, you could use your hands. In fact, even though I'll press it down fairly firmly with the measuring cup, I'll come back to it and press the corners with my fingers just to make sure that I got it in well all the way around. When that's fairly firm, make sure you wipe off the bottom. Again, go back and press in the edges, make sure that it's firm all the way to the sides. And then we're going to go ahead with our next ingredient. The next things we're going to do are filling. Now I am using a peaches from the freezer. If it's peach season and you've got really fresh peaches and they're really juicy and they're great eating peaches, by all means, if you have them and you're willing to sacrifice them to a baked item instead of actually eating them fresh, they'd be wonderful in here. Just make sure you blanch them or peel them, pit them, slice them fairly thinly, and they'll be ready to go. You need about 2 cups. I'm using frozen peaches that you're putting into the freezer right now. They are not eternally good in the freezer. You do need to use them within 6 to 12 months. If you are going through the winter and you're finding that you're not using them, you need to make a plan for them. You pay for things in the freezer each month because you pay your electric bill to keep the freezer running. So the cost of the peaches in the freezer continues to rise. And inversely, the quality of the peaches goes down. So the eating quality, the nutrition quality, safety, they're good, but from other standpoints, you lose. So I'm going to add to our peaches because they are going to be juicy when they're baked. I'm going to add a half a teaspoon of cornstarch, and I'm going to add a 1/4 teaspoon of ground ginger, a tablespoon of sugar, and if your peaches are really sweet, you may decide to leave that one out, and then a 1/4 teaspoon of ground cinnamon. We're going to stir these together, and they're just going to go on top of our peaches. Remember, your oven is preheating at 350 degrees. Once you get these fairly well blended, you're just going to put them on top of your mixture here, of the base, and kind of spread them out a little bit. Now the peaches should be pretty well thawed if you're using frozen peaches, otherwise it's going to extend the baking time. So the baking time on this particular recipe is going to be somewhere between 30 and 45 minutes based on how thawed your peaches are or whether or not they're fresh, and of course the variation from oven to oven. Going back, getting the rest of the topping, we're just going to sprinkle this over the top. And then I'm going to pat it down just a little bit to make sure that it firmly adheres. I don't want it falling off when people are eating them later on. So pat that down and that one's ready to go. In the oven, 30 to 45 minutes, 350 degrees. Now we're going to come back to this one. This is one that I baked earlier. Notice that we've lined it with parchment, and here's where you get the benefit of having that parchment lining. It lifts straight out, comes out on the board. You need to let it cool for at least 30 minutes, maybe longer before this will do this. Then you just cut it in. It should make at least 9 servings. Fewer if you're worried about the number of calories or the amount of sugar that you're getting from this one. Remember, this is an occasional treat, not a daily occurrence, so it's okay to have something special once in a while. I hope you'll give this one a try. It's peach oatmeal bars. For Oklahoma Gardening, I'm Barbara Brown.
We hope you enjoyed this video. It's part of our Oklahoma Gardening YouTube channel. You can also find even more videos on our OK Gardening Classics YouTube channel. And join us on social media for great gardening tips, photos, and discussion.